What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to the WWE NXT Vengeance Day 2023 Pay-Per-Viewpoint post-show, coming to you from the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango. I see Peter is in the chat. What's up, Peter? Hopefully some other people falling in now that we have got this up and running. Dane's here. What's up, Dane? We're going to be running down the pay-per-view, telling you what went on, my thoughts on everything, run down the future of what we're going to be getting heading into NXT Stand and Deliver, and anything else we feel like talking about. So chat it up in the comments. If you're listening to this after the fact, leave a comment below. Make sure that you are supporting us on all the different platforms and means that you can, including the Redbubble and TeePublic shops for the merchandise side of things, or the Patreon or the join button to get you access to the channel membership stuff on YouTube. Same kind of deal. Darkcast, Pick Your Poison, and so on and so forth. The little thanks button is also a good little tip jar if you're not able to do like a super chat or something. All that stuff goes a great way in making sure that I can continue to keep doing these things, especially now, so more than ever. So keep all that in mind. If you like what you got coming from us, then hit the like button on there and, toss a little spare change our way. But let's go through here and start talking about the Vengeance Day pay-per-view. Actually, let's address something first. Peter just asked a question. Let's see what he asked. Do you want to talk about how Cole said Cody's challenging for the WWE title at WrestleMania? The WWE title? I mean, so far they're kind of just treating it as the Undisputed Championship, so maybe that's just kind of a little bit of a flub on his part, but then they did do the whole thing with the Raw and SmackDown tag titles, so maybe they are going to split it in some fashion. We have some time. I don't know, maybe The Rock's still telling them that he's interested and they're going to do too. In any fashion, NXT, this was their first live show in front of an audience outside of the Performance Center, or the Capitol Wrestling Center, I should say, for, so long that I can't remember when the last one was. It was probably, we're talking the NXT TakeOver era had passed, but maybe it was like in your house the first time around. Might have been, I don't know. They're saying Portland. That had to be 2019, sometime in 2019. Crazy that that's the case, but nevertheless, they had the setup to have different people here, and I think that helped out quite a bit. It made it look like it was a little more interesting to have people, outside of the 20 people or whatever are in the Performance Center, and the fake video graphics behind of the silhouettes and all. I liked being able to have at least like a Raw-sized crowd, it seemed. And, it really felt like a Monday Night Raw in a lot of ways because of the red tint that they put on the crowd. And, Vengeance Day's got a red logo, everything like that. So, this was an interesting enough episode of Monday Night Raw, I should say. The kickoff, nothing really too much going on there. The steel cage match was given an extra little tweak where you're not supposed to be able to win by escaping anymore. So that was interesting heading into that. And then they just ran down the card, talked about who they thought was going to win and all that. Charlotte Flair started off with the opening promo. I don't know exactly why they decided to do that, but, Charlotte and Charlotte makes sense that way. So kind of neat. Not the biggest and most important thing in the world, but a little bit of a thumbs up. The first match of the night, though, was the North American Championship match. Wes Lee successfully defending over Dijak. This was a good match, especially good when it came to an opener. And I thought it was interesting that they had Wesley come out first, but the more that I thought about it, the more I thought, well, he's babyface, and maybe he's going to get more of a pop, and they don't really care as much anymore as they used to about the idea of like the champion goes on last every single time or anything. They've floated around with that. Look at what we've got with WrestleMania. People act like the first show and the opener of night one of WrestleMania is just the same as one of the main events and stuff. So I had thought that maybe that means that Dijak was going to win, but they had a back and forth match, very even. Dijak looked strong, but at the same time, Lee was able to get some reversals. You know, they did this little thing where Lee did these unnecessary flips because people, you know, how many times have we seen people do like a cartwheel that leads into an elbow or They run to the ropes, and then they run back to the same spot that they were, and then they stop, and then they do a move. He did all these unnecessary flips. Dijak catches him, and then Lee's would be able to reverse him into a poison rana. They had some moments like that here and there. Eventually, Dijak hit a couple of moves that I thought that he was going to win, like a choke slam, and he was going for the feast your eyes, but Dijak got rolled up instead. They did a little spot where Lee did a hurricanrana reversal, and it was a power bomb off the turnbuckle, and it was, a reversal in that kind of way. I thought that Dijak might have gotten injured there because his neck and his head was landing in a weird position. Turns out Dijak did get injured in the match, but I don't think that was the spot that ended up happening, because at the end of this, his left middle finger is very clearly broken and not in the position that anybody other than Pete Dunne would really like for it to be. See, Marco's in the chat. What's up, Marco? I am a little bit disappointed in the outcome. Leslie retains, but he did so because of a distraction from Tony D'Angelo and Channing Stacks Lorenzo, which follows up on the payback thing that we got before. So D'Angelo lost that. He wanted to get some kind of vengeance. Stacks was going to do something. D'Angelo told him to wait, and that I forget the phrase exactly, but it was something like vengeance or street vengeance has no expiration date or something. And storyline wise, this makes sense. They screwed over Dijak. He's able to lose, but not look too weak. Wesley retains. And then you can move on going forward either with a triple threat match or with Tony D'Angelo against Wesley, or maybe both move on and it's D'Angelo against Dijak in a separate feud and Wesley gets a new challenger. There are a couple different ways they could go about doing this, but what I'm hoping is I'd like to see them just continue it, have a triple threat at Stand and Deliver, and at the end of the day, I want Dijak to win the championship because I don't think that he's going to win the NXT championship, and I don't honestly think that his character is particularly great enough to be the main guy right now, but I could definitely see him as North American champion. I think Wesley has already hit his ceiling in a lot of ways, and yeah, it's not necessarily a situation where Lee's bad or anything. I'm not saying that, but I think that he's ran the course of what he can do as champion outside of just fighting people and beating them. You know what I mean? So I'd be cool with Tony D'Angelo winning the title too. I think that he might bring a little interesting wrinkle to the mix, but curious how long Dijak will be out as well. Peter's asking that in the chat. A broken finger. I don't remember the last time that we had a broken finger, how long that person was out. I believe it's at least a few weeks, though, and more than likely that will probably stop him from being able to compete at NXT Stand and Deliver. So at the moment, without having any of the information about that, I am working under the assumption we're getting Tony D'Angelo against Wesley at Stand and Deliver, and Dijak's just going to be out. I guess we'll figure that out when we learn more. But Dijak loses, Wesley retains. Then we move on to the NXT Women's Tag Team Championship match. This pointed out something that I thought was pretty interesting. I didn't realize that they were at this point yet, but they, the current champions, Kayden Carter and Katana Chance, officially surpassed every other women's tag team to be the longest reigning WWE Tag Team Champions, either on the main roster or on the NXT side of things. Because the Kabuki Warriors had 180 days, I believe, or 179, 180, somewhere around that mark. And KC and KC are at 187. So it goes to show you how little these championships mean when both sets of titles have been around for as long as they've been around, and there have been as many champions and sets of reigning champions as there's been, and these are the longest reigning champions. Now, can you tell me who they've feuded with over these 187 days, or anything noteworthy that they've done beyond winning the titles in kind of a surprise? I don't think you can. And I like KC and I like KC, but their whole run with these belts has been sort of blah. So I'm actually a fan of the outcome here. Kiana James and Fallon Henley won the titles by pinfall. they had a situation where, for the most part, they were going back and forth pretty well. It was actually a better match than I anticipated that it was going to be. And they got to a point in here where Fallon Henley went to pin Kayden Carter, and Kiana James did something similar to what she did for the last match that they had. So she cheated while Fallon Henley was not looking. She held down Carter's legs for the pinfall. Referee didn't see it. So the champions are crowned, new champions. There's no, because this is pro wrestling, so of course it doesn't matter. You know, the referees pay attention when they need to pay attention, and the referees come out and tell another referee that there was a problem when we need to do the fake out. This situation, I guess nobody in the back was watching, and ended up just being new champions are crowned, and we're going to turn a blind eye to the situation. So I am expecting at this point on the Tuesday episode of NXT, I think that we're going to get one of those backstage segments or an in-ring promo or something where Carter and Chance are going to say, hey, look, that's ridiculous. You know, we didn't actually lose the titles. We demand a rematch. And I think that Fallon Henley is going to be 100% game for that. Her character hasn't turned heel yet in my mind. I know some people think that that's heading in that direction, but I read into that as she is going to say, that's not the way that I wanted to win the titles, and this is what the issue is between the two of us tagging up. You know, we've got some potential, but at the same time, you need to do things my way, and I'm not down with cheating and everything, to the point that they're going to do a rematch. Maybe it's going to be at Stand and Deliver, but I honestly think they're going to get it out of the way ahead of time, and they'll do it on NXT probably. Maybe Henley will be okay with cheating at that point. Maybe they'll win outright. Maybe James will do something again that Fallon Henley didn't see, and, like she'll hold the tights or something. I do expect that they're going to retain the titles, and I do expect that by the end of Stand and Deliver, or not too soon after that, or too long after that, I should say, that Alba Fire and Isla Dawn are going to be holding those belts. The temporary friendship between James and Henley starts off contemptuous, and it's going to end with the two of them feuding with each other. But a transitional reign like this, I'm totally on board with. And it gets the belts off of KC and KC. They can move up to the main roster if they need to, or they want to, or WWE has something in mind for them. They can just go back to the end of the line or something after this. I think if they would have kept the belts on them longer, it wouldn't have necessarily been anything better. So this is a step up, I think. And I think that, they're on the right track when it comes to this. So the follow-up for that was a little fun backstage thing where Drew Gulak was talking to Hank Walker, because they had set up this thing about a watch party going down in the Performance Center, which I think is pretty cool, because then it kind of shows off that camaraderie. They're all in the big locker rooms together. So even though they've got their feuds and everything, you're supposed to look at them as this big training class and all. And Gulak was telling Walker to pay attention to what happened in the Dijak and Wesley match, and said, Dijak is one of the bigger guys here, and look at the way that Wesley was approaching the match. He was flying around, he's the high flyer and all. So if you're the bigger guy, you're going to need to ground the high flyers, and keep that in mind. That's always going to be their strategy. So I thought that was good on its own. But then also he starts saying, why are you dressed like this? Why do you look like you're my electrician, or you're going to do some construction work or whatever? Get some new ring gear, which everybody's been, complaining about the way that Hank Walker just wears basically just pants and a t-shirt or whatever. And I think that that's an interesting little thing that they're doing here. Still kind of curious where Charlie Dempsey's going to come in here, because there's almost three coaches in a way. Like, Dempsey's not his own coach, but he did that little guest spot with Chase University, and then that led to some problems, and then Gulak's here. So you have Coach Gulak and Hank Walker, and you've got Andre Chase and Duke Hudson, but then you've also got Charlie Dempsey, and he's somebody that I've earmarked for the North American Championship for a while, and he could very easily be the guy that beats Wesley if they're not going with Tony D'Angelo or Dijak. But they're not hinting towards that. So maybe a triple threat's happening down the line, but Charlie Charlie Dempsey doesn't have his equivalent of a Hank Walker or a Duke Hudson. I don't know. I like it, though. I thought that this was fun. Big fan of the 2 out of 3 falls match that followed as well. Carmelo Hayes scores the first decision after a long while. I didn't have a stopwatch going for it or anything, but it was well past the point that I thought that they were going to do a decision, and he ended up eventually getting a submission fall. So that led into, after a long while, they had their good entrances with the Titantron. They had a lot of solid back and forth action. He eventually scores that submission, and I'm naturally assuming, okay, Apollo Crews is going to get the next one, and then something's going to happen with Hayes, and he's going to get it. It's going to be 2-1. Instead, Trick Williams has been doing some stuff on the outside. Again, as expected, he's always going to interfere. And Apollo Crews gets a little bit of backup with Commander Aziz. But he's not Commander Aziz anymore. He's back to Dabba-Kato. And Dabba-Kato tries to even the odds, only for Hayes to be able to capitalize on this whole thing, get the pin, win with a 2-0, and then Dabba-Kato lays out Apollo Crews. And I can't help but to wonder, is this a little sloppy? Wouldn't it have made a little bit more sense for Dabba-Kato to cost Apollo Crews that pinfall, rather than that he's helping Apollo, and it's a little convoluted why Hayes is able to get the distraction, and then he's mad at Apollo. I don't know. I know that they're transitioning this out of the idea of about being like, okay, Dabba-Kato is going to feud with Apollo Crews going forward because Hayes is going to be the number 1 contender, and we're going to move on from this Hayes and Crews feud. But at the same time, I think that maybe would have made more sense if Dabba-Kato would have just come out, pretended to be on Crews' side, and then like hit him. Then you've got the same thing, but at least it kind of protects Apollo Crews a little bit more. Maybe they're not worried about it. Maybe Crews is here just to lose to Dabba-Kato as well, and their only priority is to get as much out of him while they can. Maybe that's not the case. I don't know. Maybe Dabba-Kato is going to reveal that he actually was on the side of Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes from the start. I don't think there's a justification for him to be like, I was supposed to be on Crews' side, and then I completely changed my mind, and now I hate him. Nothing happened there to do that. It's not like Crews accidentally hit Dabba-Kato, and, now he's mad at him or something. So that's a little sloppy. But Hayes won. Hayes was the guy that I thought was going to win. He was the guy that I thought should win. And I'm interested in Dabba-Kato being back in the mix, especially as Dabba-Kato. They're not doing the gimmick anymore where Commander Aziz makes any sense. And they very easily could have just called him Aziz, or even could have still called him Commander Aziz and just, kept the same character and not have him be a part of that. But Dabba-Kato, Babatunde, whatever you want to call him, he's big. And not a lot of people are. That joke is so stupid. In any fashion, that turned into the Fatal 4-Way for the NXT Tag Team Championship. And props to Thea Hale for always being as energetic as she is. Props to Pretty Deadly for always selling their obnoxious characters. Can't say the same about Gallus. My first reaction to this match was they really are the more boring team out of this 4. And I don't even like their new theme song because it's just a lesser version of their previous one. The way that I wrote it up on EWN, I said, it kind of reminds me of how TNA would do a knockoff theme, and it was just almost the same, but different enough that it was off-putting. Or how if you go to like a dollar store, there's always knockoff versions of things. And I remember back in the day that you'd go to get you'd see like a knockoff Power Rangers toy, and it would be called something like the Ranger Morphing Power Squad, or you see like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles thing, and it's like Action Turtle Hero Power Team or something. So this is, I liked their theme before, and this is, if you took that theme and you got rid of the melody that made it catchy and just made it sound similar. So they had a good match. Everybody's doing a great job. A lot of back and forth action. Great spots between people here and there. Like, Andre Chase doing a vertical suplex on Kit Wilson. They crash through everybody else, falling from the top rope to the outside. And there was a lot of back and forth between the idea of who's going to go through the commentary table. Eventually, it's Duke Hudson being slammed by Gallus. But it ultimately ends with Mark Coffey pinning Xavier Woods. Gallus are our new tag team champions. And I felt deflated about that. Because honestly, I like Gallus, but I like Gallus better as a three-person crew. And Joe Coffey is the guy with all the personality between them. He's not there. He's not part of this. I don't know why he's not there. Maybe it's another visa issue thing. But without him being the guy spearheading the whole thing, Mark Coffey and Wolfgang on their own are pretty bland. They're good in the ring, but that's not the one and only thing that saves everybody. And I would have gone with the Dyad. I would have gone with Induced Share. I would have gone with back to the Creed brothers. I would have gone with Andre Chase University. I would have gone with putting it back on Pretty Deadly, keeping it on the New Day. Honestly, I would have gone with Idris Enofe and Malik Blade as champions. That's more interesting. Or Von Wagner gets a tag team partner. Or you give it to Drew Gulak and Hank Walker. Or almost any other team for the most part. But Gallus feels like the most boring option. And can't say that I'm as excited now to see what happens for NXT Stand and Deliver, because if it's just these teams again, or you throw other teams together, or it's Gallus against the Creed brothers or whatever, I don't think it's going to be as entertaining. I think that the New Day going into Stand and Deliver as champions would have been the most interesting scenario, especially if they would have been up against Induced Share or the Dyad, or maybe they could have done that. I mean, you do this fatal four-way, maybe they do another fatal four-way, and it ends up being the New Day against the Dyad and the Creed brothers and Induced Share. Maybe that would have been the best case scenario. So blah, whatever. What's Dane saying here? FTR picked them to beat when they returned to NXT. I still do think that FTR is going to return to NXT. Actually, I don't think that they're necessarily going to go to NXT. I think that they are going to go to WWE, but I think that maybe we'll find out soon enough about them, or a little bit after Mania, because their deal ends in April. I don't remember exactly when in April, but it's going to be after Mania no matter what, because April 1st is Mania. So, yeah, I mean, Gallus is champions. It's not the worst case scenario, but it was kind of my worst case scenario for this match at the very least, and that's a little downer. So, no title change when it comes to the NXT Women's Championship match, though. That was a triple threat between Roxanne Perez against Gigi Dolin and Jacy Jayne. And this was exactly as we anticipated. I actually did run a stopwatch clock for this, because we had said this in our predictions. I've said it in on multiple articles and everything, of this is going to be the typical triple threat affair. The champions going into it with a handicap, and Dolin and Jayne are like, well, we're a tag team, so it's going to be the two of us against you, but they keep arguing with each other, so clearly somebody's going to go for some kind of a pin or something, and that's going to lead into the two of them fighting, and then it's going to be a regular triple threat match. 3 minutes into the match, they have already teased potentially hitting each other, and Jayne crashes into Dolin. 7 minutes into the match, it's full blown, we're just going to have it every woman for herself. So it took 7 minutes for a match that I think was about 16 minutes long or so. And it was fine. But at the same time, you're repeating ground that I've seen before. I've seen Perez against Dolin. I've seen Perez against Jayne. The Jayne against Dolin stuff wasn't all that encapsulating for me. So I was just sort of waiting until Roxanne hit her finisher, and she did. Super Pop Rocks off the top rope from Jacy Jayne, or onto Jacy Jayne, I should say. And Dolin's knocked on the outside, so Jayne gets pinned. Perez retains. I guess we're going to figure out on NXT if that means that that's the end of Toxic Attraction, or that they are going to do what I'm anticipating, which is we've bonded again over the fact that fuck Roxanne Perez, and they just move up to the main roster as a tag team. that's going to be the case. So it left a little to the imagination, but at least Roxanne gets a strong win. That helps her title reign in the grand scheme of things. She looks stronger now. And maybe we can move on to some completely other thing for Stand and Deliver. Currently thinking they're probably going to go Roxanne Perez against Cora Jade. But there's a chance that it's Tiffany Stratton. There's a chance that it's Zoe Stark. Those are the two that I think have the strongest chance of beating Roxanne Perez, and I don't think that she's losing at Stand and Deliver. So I am very much leaning towards it's going to be Roxanne against Cora, and that'll be the big blow off to them being, former teammates, and they've been enemies for quite a while. So I think that that's kind of where we're heading. But hey, Tuesday night might come along, and come Tuesday, according to Von Wagner, I might have a completely different opinion about this. I don't know. Finally, the main event happened, and I gotta be honest, I instantly forgot everything that happened in this match. I don't remember thinking any of it was bad, but I couldn't tell you anything that happened except for I might not even have this right now. I might be just blanking on this. It was a vertical suplex, I'm believing, from the top of the cage. It wasn't the full top of the cage. It's not like Breaker was standing on top of the cage and did a vertical suplex that way. But Grayson Waller was there, and, Bron Breaker was on the ropes and everything. So they did a superplex, and Breaker got his spear in, and he wins. And that's it. And I don't know. I felt underwhelmed. Like I said, I don't remember anything that happened here. He retained in a way that I figured makes sense. And, I didn't expect Grayson Waller to win the title here or anything. And it being a steel cage match almost didn't matter to me whatsoever. It was just basically a regular match that happened to be around a steel cage. So I gotta say, even though this isn't anything bad, it's kind of a flop in some ways. I'm sure there's going to be worse things, the way that this kind of thing goes, like, yeah, I'm underwhelmed, but I'm not going to be like complaining about it. I'm not going to be saying that, this is the worst match of the year or anything along those lines, but it did feel like there was a lot more potential here and that they didn't capitalize on it. Maybe it's just me, I'm not in the right headspace right now. So maybe I just kind of completely block this out or something. Maybe if I rewatch this, I might go, yeah, I missed that. I missed I just wasn't paying attention or something. Because apparently I fell asleep during SmackDown last night. I don't remember anything about Bray Wyatt popping up with Uncle Howdy. So I know I didn't fall asleep for this. I know I was actively awake, but maybe I just shut my brain off. Maybe it didn't keep my attention. Maybe it was legitimately just a kind of flat, boring, generic match. Let me know if you agree or you disagree. Did I miss something in particular, or did this just come off as a little flat to you too? In any fashion, Bron Breakker is still your champion. Carmelo Hayes came out at the end of the show to give it a little stare down. Hayes is winning that belt at NXT Stand and Deliver. Bron Breakker's coming up to the main roster. It's going to happen. I'm excited for that, and I'm curious where they're going to go in some other directions. I'm expecting Alba Fire and Isla Dawn to have a match against Fallon Henley and Kiana James. I'm expecting Gallus to probably be up against more than one team. But then again, maybe they don't even defend the titles. Maybe they're at a situation where they end up doing some kind of singles feud or something instead. And they usually only have 5 or 6 matches, so if we get the women's championship, we get the men's championship, the North American title, which is probably Tony D'Angelo against Wes Lee, and then we get 2 feuds or the women's tag team titles, and then another feud or 2 or whatever it might be. Maybe that's what we're looking at for Stand and Deliver, or maybe they have something else in mind. Maybe they're going to do like another fun. I don't expect Jushin Thunder Liger against Tyler Breeze, but maybe there's something else that'll happen. What's Peter saying here? Rock no-shows Mania, but appears on Raw, where Goldberg, Braun debuts and spears The Rock. Yeah, they're just going to continue to do that kind of story. That'd be kind of funny. Yeah, that's NXT Vengeance Day. It was fine. Not fantastic all across the board, but some good stuff here and there, and nothing really bad, but some things that were a little bit underwhelming. So I don't know if I was going to do a grade for this. I'm not the biggest fan of doing grades. I'm not the biggest fan of doing like 5-star type reviews or anything. I'm the type of person who likes 7-star systems because that's kind of like 3 good, 3 bad, 1 in the middle. And then you could do the 3 bad or the good bad, the middle bad, and the bad bad. And, I'm kind of complicated like that. But I guess if I had to go with some sort of grade system for this, I give it like a B- or something. It's fine. Agree or disagree? Leave your thoughts. Tell me what you thought in the comment section below. And we will continue talking on this road to WrestleMania with the rest of what happens with NXT and obviously the main roster stuff as well going on in our next bits of things we're doing. As far as next week's main event for this podcast, I don't know what we're going to do. What's up, Anthony Briscoe? The vibe for this show right now is definitely not the vibe it normally is. I'm just wrapping up and you're not really in the most super enthusiastic kind of mentality at the moment and all that. So I'm a little bit downer at the moment, and we are kind of rounding things out here, but definitely check back on some previous post shows for some more enthusiastic things. I am flying solo for this edition as well, so I don't have Rob and Callum that I'm bouncing off of, and our enthusiasm for like the Royal Rumble is definitely more of an indicator of this. Going back to my point about the next episode of the podcast. We'll obviously have another episode of the hot tags coming up next week, but on top of that, we are heading into Elimination Chamber. So I do want to do something based off of Chamber, and I'm not entirely sure what that could be. 2 weeks from now, we have our Elimination Chamber predictions. We're going to have our post show immediately following that. Same usual pay-per-view point schedule. But next week, we could do virtually anything for the most part. We can do a fan tracks, or fan outs table, I should say. Maybe we rewatch an old Elimination Chamber and kind of gear ourselves up. I think it was Rob who had suggested maybe watching the Intercontinental Championship one, because now we've got the United States title on the line, and we can kind of do, hey, the mid-card title was on the line for this one. Let's talk about the last time the mid-card title was there. Maybe we do that. Maybe we do something based off of the quick turnaround. We've been wanting to do that for the longest time. But we do have the Smark Madness tournament coming up. I'm going to have to hammer out some details for that coming up soon, because March is going to sneak up on me. And then next thing you know, I'm going to be like, oh man, I don't really know what to do for the Smark Madness tournament. So maybe that'll be the case. Maybe we do something completely unrelated. We haven't done a Superstar Scores in a while. We haven't done a one more match in a while. I've thought about maybe us doing one more match Batista, because Knock at the Cabin is coming out, or actually it's already out. I'm going to see that tomorrow. I might do a review of that. I'm not sure. We'll see. But maybe something Batista related like that. If Batista were to come out of retirement, what is the one match you'd like to see him do? Maybe we do Superstar Scores for Batista, or maybe something else ends up happening. Unfortunately, we just lost Lanny Poffo, so maybe we do something as like a retrospective of the Genius character, or, the best snooty I'm so smart characters in wrestling history. Maybe we do something unrelated to Elimination Chamber or the current events completely. Maybe we just watch Ready to Rumble. I don't know what it might be, but we got some ideas in mind. I want to hear any other suggestions as well. If you guys ever have anything in mind that you want us to do, let us know. Also, if you want to make sure that we do something in particular, then you got that Pick Your Poison option on the Patreon and the YouTube channel membership, where you can always directly fund one of those things. For instance, if you hadn't checked it out already, you can check back on our most recent one of those, where Magpie had sponsored a fantasy rebooking of WCW Starrcade 1999. And, it was fun to be able to go back and talk about something that we don't talk about all that often, because we normally just, I focus on WWE more than anything else, but being able to do that is something interesting. And maybe we do something more like that. We got plenty of mock draft ideas. We got plenty of fantasy booking ideas. I got some things kind of on the back burner that I want to get around to over these next couple weeks or so. Maybe we'll try one of those. One way or another, we're coming back next week with something. And we hope that you join us for that. We hope that you join us for the hot tags and for eventually the Elimination Chamber predictions and post show and everything. And that you stay tuned for all the rest of the stuff on the road to WrestleMania and, keep supporting us and everything. So adios when it comes to the NXT Vengeance Day Pay-Per-Viewpoint post show. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time, everyone. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and I'm being counted out.